Trust is by far the most underrated asset in business. And what's interesting to me is how many companies throw it away so casually instead of trying to stockpile it. So much of what dominates our modern economy is based on what people say can or can't be done. But nobody knows what can or can't be done. Success can become a liability in itself because it attracts predators, because it creates temptation, because it's so much easier to destroy than it is to create. If you want to make your OKRs go up, you can always do it by spending down our trust account. Then you have these circular deals in AI that I bet are going to be scandals pretty soon. We have built an economy that is eating itself alive as we hollow company after company after company. Trust is the asset that compounds.
Quick note as we start the show. Today we have our famous guest host. He's on show number 8, working with me today, Scott Albro. So I think that's 8, right? I think you're on number 8.
I don't know.
So yeah, as we get into this. By the way, I'm gonna get, before we even intro, I had to take my dog to the vet. I think all of us in tech messed up by not becoming veterinarians. It is like it is unreal. It was just to check him on a bunch of stuff, and I walked out $800 poorer. I mean, it was amazing.
You know, I saw a great tweet today, or whatever it's called now, post today related to this. It was some VC, I can't remember. He basically tweeted, whoever starts alpha school for dogs will become a billionaire. And alpha school is that cutting edge school down in Austin. I think maybe there are a few locations now, right? And anyway, I thought it was a great idea. So
yeah, I'm sure that the problem is you have to get the dogs to use apps. That's going to be a little challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. We're going to end up with some AI that can translate dog language to humans. So
that will be the bestseller. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
From ABM to PLG, from Medic to MedPick, the world of business is constantly evolving. We'll cover the who, what, where, when, why, and most importantly, how you get the transaction. I'm Matt Amundsen, and he's Craig Rosenberg. Let's get started.
All right. So today, Scott and I, we do have a guest. I'm just going to admit I'm a little nervous just because today's guest is famous. And I'll just leave, before I even say, so today's guest is Eric Ries. He is the creator of the Lean Startup Method, which we've all sort of quoted from, grabbed from. And, that is the author of the bestseller, The Lean Startup, The Leader's Guide, and The Startup Way. And, the term, the phrase, is it the term, the acronym MVP? That came from you, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, sorry about that. For people who are sick and tired of hearing about it, it's my fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
Albro used it a lot. He was my CEO for 15 years. So.
I used to hammer people on that. But this is definitely the biggest guest that's ever been on the transaction, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Eric's PR team reached out. I'm like, hey, are you sure you meant us? And the PR guy's like, yes, he likes fun shows. I'm like, okay, all right, well, we'll do it.
I do like fun shows.
Actually, before we start, I do have it feels like the Lean Startup and a lot of the things that like MVP and this sort of constant optimization philosophy that you brought to the table, it endured. I mean, what was it, 15, 20 years ago you wrote the book?
Yeah, it's been 15. Yeah, the book is 15 years old now. That's right.
What do you think? I mean, what was what allowed it to sort of stay relevant like that through all those years?
Well, gosh, I don't know. It's probably not my youthful good looks and my, stylish writing. I think it's much more about how useful the ideas turned out to be to a whole generation of founders. The timing was good too. I started writing about Lean Startup right around the time of the great financial crisis. So of course people were hungry for new ideas, and calling it lean, since people thought that meant it was going to be a lot cheaper, I think that was also really helpful. But you never know with these things. Sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle and it just happens. And again, I don't take the credit for it. I hope the book was good. I hope I did my part, but my part was just one element of a whole movement of people who wanted to see the practice of entrepreneurship and the practice of business be changed to be more scientific, more iterative, more humane. And I think we did pretty good.
I mean,
Craig, I think in our world, the go-to-market world, there's a flavor of the year every year. there's something new every year, right?
Mm.
And I think about, Eric, what you did for startups more generally, product development, right? To have something that's lasted 15 years is really, really remarkable. So thank
Oh,
you for
thanks.
that. It's incredible.
It has been quite a run. So I'm grateful really to the people who have been the evangelists for these ideas, especially in the early days. Now it's easy to evangelize because it's popular, but when we first started talking about lean startup, most people thought it was absolutely ridiculous, and it was counter, like it was contravening these best practices that were really firmly entrenched. That I remember people tell me, "You'll never be able to change. That's how it's always been. That's how it has to be for some reason." And I actually feel like the fact that people took a leap of faith on it and said, "Well, because it makes sense to me, I'm willing to speak up in favor of it." You open your mouth, you never know what might happen next.
That's great. Before I talk about the new book and then kick off the real part of the show, the what about like now? Like, is there anything related to AI and the new revolution that we're going through that makes the lean startup more relevant, the same, or less relevant?
Oh, I think a lot more relevant. I was just, yeah, it's funny. A couple weeks ago, I did Lenny's podcast, and he was talking about, he's been interviewing all the product managers and go-to-market leaders at the major AI companies to really unpack how they're working. And he was like, they don't call it MVP because that's not a customer-facing term, but they are really embracing, the winners there are embracing lean startup in a really profound way, because at the end of the day, you can't really predict what these models are going to do. And so when you embed them into a product, you have all this uncertainty. You have to experiment with real life use cases, or you're sunk. And I just thought that was such a good point. Like, this is not, I wrote the lean startup well in advance of ever hearing the term generative AI, right? Like, before I knew what a large language model, I could never have predicted Claude Code or anything like that. But the principles have held up really well because we still see the same two fundamental facts. You think, like, what are the mega trends about business in our lifetimes? It has been, one, about the democratization of access to the tools of building. So faster cycle times, more iteration, more data, more ability to put ideas into the world. Any individual person now can be a first party competitor to some of the world's largest companies. And on the second hand, increased uncertainty. Customers have more choices. Channels are more crowded. Markets are more interconnected than ever. And obviously, we live in a time of geopolitical uncertainty too. So you have kind of external uncertainty on top of all the uncertainty we as innovators are always trying to create ourselves. So yeah, when you have that combination of extreme speed and extreme uncertainty, lean startup is you know, that's the tool that is evolved for those conditions.
Well said. Albro, were you getting up to react to that, or were you just reacting physically?
No, I
Yeah.
was just getting excited. I mean, I
That was
couldn't
so
agree
good.
more. So it caused me to
Yeah.
sit up in my seat. What's the meme where the guy sits up in his seat? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the new book, I love the title, by the way. So just
Oh,
everyone will
thank
get
you.
excited about that. Incorruptible: Why Good Companies Go Bad and How Great Companies Stay Great. I mean, come on, man. That is a great title.
Well, thank you very much.
So just for the audience, our special guest that is, I'm very nervous. I wore 3 coats of deodorant for her. I just say, hey, man, this is how we do the show. And I said, hey, we'd love to hear a story from you. He's like, oh, let's do it.
Let's
So,
do it. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
talk to
no,
us.
no, it's great. I feel like kind of the essence of the book is in this one story. So let me tell you the legend of Saul Price.
Love Saul.
So Saul is the unquestioned GOAT of retail, like the father of modern retail. So much so that people don't know this. When Sam Walton decided he was going to get into retail, he was like, what should I name my company? He named it Walmart as an intentional tribute to FedMart, the company that Saul Price had started in the 1950s. But what's interesting about Saul is that he was a lawyer before he became a retailer. And he was trained that he had, as a lawyer, a fiduciary duty to his client. It means you put the client's needs before your own. So when he became a retailer, he said, you got to be a fiduciary to the customer. That's what it meant. So when his competitors would try to undercut him on price, Saul would put up signs in his own store that says, don't buy this product from me. You can get it cheaper at this other store down the street. because being a fiduciary meant he wanted to get his customers the best price. He didn't care. So his go-to-market strategy was so different than hardly any other retailer, certainly at that time, but even today would be very unusual. He didn't spend money on sales and marketing. He said the best advertisement is the unsolicited testimonial of a satisfied customer. He practiced what he called capped margins. He wouldn't mark up any item more than 14%. And he paid above market wages. He called it the intelligent loss of sales. He had limited selection, only of the highest quality products that he would personally vouch for. And he was a very particular warehouse format, big box retail pioneer. It really worked. Customers loved it because they felt they could trust FedMart. You knew you were getting a fair price because they were not trying to charge you as much as they could get away with. They were charging you always what they thought was fair, 14% over their own cost. Company grew, he took it public, but as a public company, he was miserable. He hated the short-term pressure of Wall Street, constantly on him to have higher prices and lower wages, but he believed in low prices and high wages. That was his formula that drove FedMart's growth. So he took the company private. He brought in new investors, a new board that he thought would understand retail better, but no, they were still hypnotized by these best practices that drive our finance-driven economy to this day. Higher prices, lower wages, squeeze what you can, faster growth, quarterly targets. We've all lived it. You don't need me to tell you all about it. Saul found it infuriating. All this culminated in a big fight in 1975. After Saul had been building FedMart for more than 20 years, he comes into work one day and he can't get into his office because the locks on the doors have been changed. He doesn't work at FedMart anymore. The board got what they wanted. Saul was in their way, in the way of more profit is how they thought about it. So they got rid of him and they were able to convert FedMart into a more conventional retail approach. You want to guess what happened? It only took him 7 years to bankrupt what Saul had built over the course of 20. By 1982, the whole chain was completely liquidated. And what's so interesting about this story is you see an act of immense value destruction being done in the name of profit. It's the same thing that destroyed so many iconic brands that we kind of think of vaguely as old-fashioned, like Sears or Circuit City. Whatever happened to Sunbeam? Whatever happened to Sharper Image? Whatever happened to Men's Warehouse? You're like, oh yeah, that thing. I remember that company. If you study the behind-the-scenes story, you'll find this incredible destruction that was caused by the very success of the company itself, because the more successful you become, the more valuable you are as a target. So FedMart was destroyed, but what happened to Saul? Did he spend the rest of his life complaining about how the market's not fair? No. He was a classic entrepreneur. See if you can relate to this. He took 2 weeks off to lick his wounds. He rented the office upstairs from FedMart, and he started again. He built a new company that he called Price Club. Today, Price Club is mostly forgotten, but that's because of what happened next. One of the people that went with him from FedMart to Price Club was named Jim Sinegal. And Jim Sinegal, a few years later after that, decided to start his own company with Saul's blessing, implementing the engine he had learned at FedMart. And a few years after that, his company and Saul's company merged to form the company we know today as Costco. So Saul is actually this is like the deep cut history of the founding of Costco. Today, Costco is a $400 billion public company, but it still, to this day, maintains the integrity of Saul's ethos. Capped margins, fiduciary to the customer. It's all still there. The $1.50 hot dog, all the famous stories you know about Costco are made possible by this particular combination of the ethos, the business philosophy, but a structure, a governance structure that protects that ethos and prevents what happened to FedMart from happening to Costco, now going on 40 years.
Now that's a story. My God. All right, well, let's react to that. Albro, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's such a. I was familiar with that story, and it's just a very compelling story, and it's so rare, I think, to find companies that are able to do what you just described there, Eric.
Yeah.
Like really focus on the customer, delivering value to the customer, but also survive in today's economic climate, right? And I do have one personal anecdote that's sort of related to this. The first CEO I ever worked for, I worked in sales, and this CEO used to beat into the sales organization that sales is just about trust.
Hmm.
And this is why salespeople exist. This was late 90s. He had this theory that all all markets commoditize over time. And so in the world of we were in the world of B2B. In the world of B2B, the thing that prevents you from commoditizing is the salesperson. And
Mm.
the way the salesperson can do that is just by being the most trustworthy partner that the customer can have. Now, I think he took the commoditization thing a little too far, right? I don't fully believe in that. But this idea that the number one job of a salesperson is to establish trust, I've always found that to be a really
Oh yeah.
compelling idea. And Eric, your story just reminds me of that, of those days now, 25, 30 years ago.
Trust is by far the most underrated asset in business. And what's interesting to me is how many companies throw it away so casually instead of trying to stockpile it. So it's like an asset that we're just like a leaky boat, just letting it drift right out. And it's true that, yes, in a sales driven process, of course, trust can be personal to an individual person, but trust can also be institutional. Bruce Schneier, the security expert, has a whole book about what we call institutional trust. And he gave this example, which I thought was so brilliant. When you get on an airplane, you are literally betting your life that the plane is going to take you where you want to go. So you say, "Oh, I trust." But who are you trusting exactly? You trust the pilot? You've never even met the pilot. How could you trust someone you've never met? You're trusting not just the pilot, but like 10,000 people. Every person who maintains that aircraft, who built it, every rivet of every joint, the staff on board, the aircraft control, the FAA. Like, think how many people are required to keep you alive. And it's so seamless, you don't even think about it. You just hop on, hop off. If there's a delay, you complain. If the food tastes bad, you complain. It's like you just had a miracle of 1 million people work together to move you to point A to point B, and you're complaining about the peanuts. Like, it's so powerful. That's the power of trust. It makes possible the seemingly impossible. And if you study mission-driven companies, which I did for the new book especially, but having been around a lot of these leaders too, you'll notice they have these incredible superpowers that if you've never seen it in action, you might actually not believe. Like I keep seeing these examples where people kind of can't fathom, like, how is that company shipping products so fast? How come they can raise so much money? How come their like cost basis is lower than their competitors? How come their customers don't churn even when they make a mistake? Why? If you look at the research, the answer is always trust. When people trust, friction goes down, costs go down, velocity increases. It's like a lubricant that makes business more efficient across the board. So, why, if it's so valuable, do we not stockpile it? And why, if it's so valuable, do we not protect it? See, this is like, again, going back to the FedMart example. You can see how Saul was able to stockpile it, but that just made it more valuable for the investors to want to steal from him. And we see that all over the economy.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, that reminds me of your work on LTSC and founding LTS. My
Sure,
my
yeah.
response to what you just said is like there's long-term thinking and there's short-term thinking, and the system right now rewards a lot of short-term thinking, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with LTSC and some of the thinking behind that? It seems related here.
Oh yeah, of course. The reason I know so much about this, corporate governance and trust and finance, and I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I can play one on TV. But I can play a lot of these other roles too. I can pretend to be a banker, pretend to be an investor, pretend to be all kinds of things because I've really been in the belly of the beast for a while. So, if you have your beat up old copy of the blue book, right, of Lean Startup, and you turn to basically the last page, it was almost the last thing I wrote in the book too. It says somebody should really build a long-term stock exchange, or LTSE. When I wrote those words, I didn't know anything about stock exchanges. It was a pure deduction from first principles based on the following argument. We know from the research, like if you read the, lean manufacturing, lean startup comes from Toyota. So if you read books about Toyota or companies like it, you will see that having a philosophy of long-term thinking is the necessary precondition for making a lot of money. And companies that have that have a huge advantage. And then I thought, oh, that's interesting. If that's how you make a lot of money as a company, why are we putting companies in a short-term pressure cooker called the public markets? Wouldn't long-term oriented investors want long-term value creating companies? And so I said, oh, okay, that seems like we've made a mistake. We have to find a way to get long-term investors and long-term companies together for mutual benefit. Am I crazy, or is that not a stock exchange? So I just wrote that somebody should really do that. And then, nobody did. Lean Startup has sold millions of copies, and it has been picked clean of its ideas. Every crazy random thing that I said someone should do in that book, believe me, someone's done it. And I've gotten to do a bunch of the things. Like I remember when I told people we were going to change how business education works, they're like, that's impossible. But I get to work on the new Harvard Business School curriculum, and now it's like entrepreneurship is taught in a way better way. I can tell you 20 things like that. But nobody ever called me to say, hey, Eric, is the stock exchange idea still available? No one ever wanted to do it. In fact, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article, straight news article, not an op-ed, that said, lean startup guy's next crazy idea. And it was about and I was like, oh, crazy can be used as a straight description. It's not considered editorial. That's just a fact. Yeah. That's how crazy it seemed. But right. I couldn't understand why. What was so weird to me was for years, literally for years, I would talk to anybody who knew anything about public markets. And I'd just say, hey, I got this crazy idea. Tell me why it won't work. And everyone I met was 100% sure it couldn't work. Impossible. Not just it wouldn't be profitable, but like you'll never get it approved. It's illegal. You'll never get companies to list it. Like everything you need to do to make an exchange, we'll never be able to do. And what was so interesting about that is the reasons they would give made no sense. So to an entrepreneur, that's like waving a red flag at the bull. Because I'm like, wait a second. I need to know why I'm not doing this. It seems like a good idea to me. And so this is 10 years ago now, maybe. I said, oh, I'll just put one foot in front of the other and see where it goes. And see what kind of progress we can make. And one day I figured I would find out why it's a bad idea, and then it will leave me alone. Hey, I might still, it's a going concern even now, but, it's not taken over the world yet. And everything that people said was impossible, we showed was possible. And eventually I came to realize that so much of what dominates our modern economy is based on what people say can or can't be done. But nobody knows what can or can't be done. So we have people, I think, who are very invested in shaping the domain of what is possible for their own benefit. And what is needed to break out of that consensus is entrepreneurs, as they always have in history, to say, don't tell me what I can't do. Let's go find out. And I think LTSE is like one instance of a general pattern I call civic infrastructure. Not just a regular old for-profit company, and not just a mission-driven company, a company that is attempting to remedy a civic scale problem that allows every other part of the economy to operate more effectively, to nurture and support other organizations too. I think we need entrepreneurs to tackle those kinds of problems, and I wanted to create a proof point that it can be done.
Very cool.
That's how I got into it.
Very cool.
Amazing. That is amazing. All right, so let's do this. That was the story we'd hoped for. There's a lot of things I think we'll point back to. I do want to make sure, though, that we have the opportunity to tie this to Incorruptible, my new favorite title. I will repeat it just for everyone to have some fun. Incorruptible, Why Good Companies Go Bad and How Great Companies Stay Great. The story has the example of why good companies go bad and how great companies stay great. That was like the story to the book. But like, I do want to sort of transition to some of the ideas that, the Incorruptible is going to bring to the table. But is there anything else you want to say about the book? And then let's talk about some of the ideas in there.
Yeah, sure. I think most leaders are taught a very narrow idea of what their job is. And they're taught that success will protect you. So like, don't worry, like the kind of stuff we're going to talk about in this episode, we're told, don't worry about that stuff. You can always do that later. You can always add it later. Just get successful, get product market fit, get rich, get successful, like gain power. Power will give you freedom. And the big message of this book is the way in which success can become a liability in itself. because it attracts predators, because it creates temptation, because it's so much easier to destroy than it is to create. So when people harvest the trust of FedMart, suck the marrow out of it, that appears to be profitable when in fact it's an act of value destruction. And can I tell you a funny story?
Oh, we
Maybe you
love
guys
funny stories.
tell me if this has happened to you. I was out to dinner with a group of friends. We were traveling away from home. And someone said, "Oh, I think this restaurant." We had 2 nights we were out. So we had 2 restaurants to pick. Someone picks the restaurant on the first night. We go there. He's like, "I haven't been here in a couple of years, but it's really good." And we sit down and we take a bite of food. And he's like, "One sec, I got to go on my phone." And we're like, "Dude, you're being rude right now. Get off your phone." "Just one sec, one sec." "Oh yeah." He turns it around. "I could tell this restaurant got bought by private equity. I could taste it." And we're all just like, "Oh no, it's going to be gross." And it was gross. So we go out to dinner the next night. A different person picks a totally different restaurant. Hasn't been there in a couple years. We sit down and I swear to God, I was like, "Is this the same damn private equity fund?" I was like, "Look it up again." And no, it was a different private equity fund, but the food tasted disgusting in that exact same way. And we were just sitting there being like, how is it possible that you can taste the capital ownership structure of a company?
Mm-hmm.
You can taste it in the food. You guys ever had this experience? It's disgusting. It's just like it
Oh, it did ruin it.
used to be great. And like so many brands, so many products. Cory Doctorow calls it enshittification, just to really drive home the point. He's talking about tech platforms, but like if you tried to Google anything recently, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
There's so many products that are so much worse. I haven't even done this. A friend of mine yesterday, out of the blue, a civilian, not some tech person, was like, "Oh, I tried to log into Facebook to look something up." I'm like, "What happened to Facebook?" I was like, "Oh yeah, you don't know?" Like, "Oh, sorry, newsflash." It was just like unbelievable. The usability is all broken. The ads are clogging up everything. And we've gotten used to the idea that once things become successful, they're gonna get ruined. And we don't even know what to call it. Like when this happens to your favorite restaurant, to your favorite brand, to your favorite product, what do you call it? Well, our grandparents knew what to call it. They would have called it corruption, the making of money without the creating of value. And today we have a very narrow idea about what corruption means. We think it only means, embezzlement or bribery. No. Corruption is literally corrupting the moral logic of our economic system. And it's closer to theft than it is to value creation. Enough.
Boom. That was a great story. And yes, so many things have happened to me where they get bought by private equity, with all due respect to my friends in the game. But yeah, that totally resonates. So as we think about some of the big ideas in Incorruptible, and you wanted to impart some of those, like 1 to 3 of those to the go-to-market audience, what would you choose to talk about, and just help us understand those, and let's talk about those.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned already the importance of trust as the pointy edge of the spear. Go to market is the pointiest point at the edge of the spear of a business, right? So go to market, that's literally the interface between the public and what we want to make. So the leadership lessons are really essential. So if you think about, again, what I was talking about before, that an incorruptible company is kind of a formula or a blueprint that combines the ethos of Saul Price with the governance fortress, the integrity that has protected Costco all these years. We need both of those elements. A lot of the leadership stuff, that comes up very regularly in a go-to-market context. So yeah, how do we make promises that people can believe? How do we make sure that we don't fall into the temptation to harvest rather than to create? And one of the funny things about the way we do OKRs these days, we do this in go-to-market, but also go-to-market is just a microcosm or a recipient of this bigger system where everyone in the company has the company's main goals decomposed down into their individual sub-metrics. The problem is, because trust is an asset, see, it's a currency you can spend as well as collect. If you want to make your OKRs go up, you can always do it by spending down our trust account. Go-to-market is the worst offender, no offense. But you have a sales target, you got a quota, you got some goal, Hey, I got an easy way for you to make your goal. Why don't you start making unbelievable promises about what the product can do? How do you, like it's so tempting. We've all done it. I've done it. Like everyone's been in this situation where it's like, look, I just make a little extra promise. The engineers will catch up to my promises eventually. It's probably going to be fine. And here's the problem. Even if you're like, I will never do that, that's deceptive. I have personal integrity. The problem is that most companies operate a competitive compensation environment. So if you don't do it, you are going to be behind the people that do it. It's like a prisoner's dilemma. Everyone can figure that out, and then they can be like, "Uh-oh, I better make sure I get to it first." So what's happening is we are competing with each other to see how quickly we can spend down the trust account. Now, of course, go-to-market is not the only offender. Can you think of ways that finance can do this, play the same trick? You see ways engineers can play the same trick? Of course. Like, even better would be to send your go-to-market team out there, with a water gun instead of an actual gun because the thing doesn't actually work. You told them to tell people it does work. Well, that's not necessarily going to cause a problem for you. You're already promoted to the next job. Meanwhile, some poor guy's trying to sell the thing you made that doesn't work. So we see it all over the modern company. We develop these tribal identities. We go to war with each other, and we're, again, locked into this kind of zero-sum struggle. Instead, we have to master the techniques of making and keeping promises, like seeing that as a economic logic that we want to master. And once you start thinking in those terms, new things become possible.
Okay, that was amazing. Hey, by the way, side note related to this and to the FedMart story when he hung the sign and said, "Don't buy this from me, buy it somewhere else."
Yeah.
Matt Dixon, I don't know if you know who he wrote the Challenger Sale, which was a very popular
yeah.
book.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So his new book, he studied literally thousands of phone calls to see like what are the attributes of the great rep.
Yeah.
One of them was that the great rep was not afraid to talk about their competitors.
Oh, yeah.
And not afraid to talk about what their competitors were better at. Not afraid to even share competitors' content if it was better than theirs.
Yeah.
And that you might lose that deal, but that trust that you've created will, come in handy down the line. And then his co-writer of the Challenger, Brett Adamson, has this similar concepts that they're bringing to market today, which is like, very similar to what you're talking about. I think of that, I thought of it initially when you brought up the sign, "Don't buy from us, buy from my
exactly.
competitor because it's a better deal." And that, as you said, when you said no offense on the go-to-market side, Scott and I are like, no offense, Tate, we know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, we've all been there. I feel like we got to be honest about it, right? We've all been there. Yeah. And you think about channel stuffing. I mean, now I feel like we haven't had a channel stuffing like public scandal in a while, but like used to be a regular feature of scandals. And you have these circular deals in AI that I bet are going to be scandals pretty soon. You see it in like the fake account scandal at Wells Fargo. Remember that one? The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. I could just go on and on and on these stories where, like, in the name of profit, we destroy the profit. Why would we do that? Like, it actually is irrational. It's illogical. But, I remember I read this blog post. I read a lot of blog posts about people who've left Google. So I did a study of employees who've been at Google for more than 10 years who write a blog post when they leave, which is, like a whole common enough that it's a whole genre of blog posts. And one of them wrote like they have this sense of like something special got lost, and Google's a great company, yet it's not what it once was. There's something different. And they have a hard time putting their finger on it. One of them put it this way. I thought it was almost poetic. They said, this person had been there, I think, 13 years. Decisions went from being made for the benefit of customers to being made for the benefit of Google to then eventually being made for the benefit of whoever was making the decision. So in all of these corruption examples, you almost always will figure out, if you study the incentive design, you'll say, oh, I see. This might be value destroying overall, but it does profit somebody. Somebody thinks this is how I'm going to get ahead. I'm going to get an advantage for it. So like, Sears, during this collapse of Sears, the guy who was running it managed to extract like $1.5 billion in fees out of the company at a time when the company was losing $11 billion. So he became a billionaire, but Sears was destroyed. I guess he sleeps okay at night somehow. I don't know. A lot of these guys, I think it's very important to realize this kind of desire to build mission-driven companies, this need to do it. It's not just a moral thing or an ethical thing. It is an economic necessity. We have built an economy that is eating itself alive as we hollow company after company after company out.
By the way, Eric, those examples you mentioned, Wells Fargo, round tripping in AI right now.
Yeah.
I think the big scandal that's coming is how people are accounting for ARR in startup land. I mean,
Oh
we
goodness. Oh
we are
gosh. Yeah.
seeing the most creative accounting around ARR, and this is squarely in the realm of go to market, right? So
Totally.
that will be a big one in the years to come.
Oh, I look forward to it. I wish we would. I
Look
actually think
forward
ARR.
to it.
I do, because like we have to purge this bad behavior from the
Yeah,
ecosystem. Like
totally.
it's really really harmful. I remember when people first taught ARR, before it was called ARR. I was taught the way you did it was you take your last month's revenue and multiply times 12, and that's your forecasted revenue for the new year, as if your most recent month was going to be your month going forward. And that was at least more honest, because it was like a rule of thumb. We weren't claiming it as recurring revenue. We were
Right.
just saying, look, if it went really well, here's what it might look like. So you get a sense, you could dimensionalize for people how big the company could be. We did that for valuation calculation reasons. We would never have dreamed of reporting that as recurring revenue. That would have been like so dishonest. Like, of course not. So I think yeah, we've got some bad practices
Yeah,
going on. Look forward to those being removed from the
there will be
ecosystem.
some cleanup there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
By the way, thank you for mixing in stories throughout the conversation. You can't tell. I can't tell you how much we've struggled on some guests to be like, tell us stories. So first, I do think like since we're being on our CRO sales leader listeners today, how are they going to react to what we're talking about in terms of how we
I could
are
tell you
thinking
exactly.
about
I
profit.
could tell you exactly, because I was on a podcast with a more traditionally trained person. Okay, I won't say who it was. And then we were doing this. It was going fine. Like, we're doing okay. They're like on board with what I'm saying. And then they were like, "But hold on a second. It sounds like what you're saying is like kind of contradicting a bunch of stuff I learned in business school. Like, what's up with that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, are you open to the possibility that some of the things they taught you in business school wasn't true?" And he was like, "Not really." Like, nope. Yeah. So if your CRO is willing to look at the evidence, a lot of these so-called best practices are actually value destroying. This is not just my opinion. Okay, Eric says, no, no, no. We have the data on this. So that means that can be challenging. Okay, I get people like, wait a minute, why was I taught this practice as good when actually it's bad? I thought being serious about business meant being extractive and exploitative. No, you're saying that that's actually value destroying. There's this better thing. But there's a bunch of evidence in the book. You'll have to just see how open-minded you can be and look at it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Look at the data yourself. Decide. But it's not just about feeling good or having employee morale or whatever. It is the reason why these companies have faster revenue growth. It is one of the most important growth drivers, because ultimately that is the asset that compounds. Trust is the asset that compounds. Where do you think the revenue comes from? We get so confused because we say, well, marketing and sales, marketing, making outbound calls, inbound, SEO, all this stuff, like that created the sale. No, that closed the sale. What created the sale was the product and the promise that we made to the customer that they believe. Their belief in our ability to do it is ultimately what powers everything else that we do. More belief means more sales. And if you've never lived through the collapse of trust, like if you've ever tried to sell something after you've lost that most precious thing, you all of a sudden realize every sales tactic in the world is useless if you don't have that precondition for it. So I think the enlightened CROs will be very excited, because here's a chance for them, first of all, to get more growth, get more acceleration over the long run, but also to deal themselves into the high level conversation. This book is about governance fundamentally, which most people don't even know what that word means, but they know that it's the thing that gets talked about at the biggest of the big kid tables, the board. So if you are at the C-suite level and you're like feeling like I'm still not cut in to the most important conversations this company has, this book can help you achieve that and form much more lasting partnerships between functions and departments, between investors and companies, between sales and marketing, between marketing and product, that kind of stuff. That's what we should be looking to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a perfect end, but I can't let you go because I do
Okay.
have to say, you did say it, which is I feel like, and Scott, you could tell me if when we're talking to like startups, so like Scott and I sort of live in C to B, C, we use the word governance, and they're gonna be like, I got no time for that. But you're talking about it in a bigger strategic way, and we've talked about it throughout. But like when you talk to early stage folks, how do you talk about it in a way that it makes sense to them where they are now and where they
Yeah.
want to go?
The most important question in the whole book is actually not which of the techniques to adopt, because the book is loaded with tactics and techniques. Okay. It's a blueprint book, not a,
Yeah.
agonizing about the problem kind of book. The most important question is not what to do, but when to do it. What you'll notice for people in the early stages is they get talked out of building the kind of company they want to build, not because someone tells them no, but because people say, well, not yet. Oh, sweetheart, it's a little early to worry about that. Get product market fit first, and then. And why don't you raise some money and then what? And you know the old joke? The old joke is started a company, so I had a problem. So I raised some money, now I have two problems. So I so I hired some people, now I have three problems. Yeah, like the things you add create momentum and problems and drama of their own, even while they attempt to fix the previous thing. So if you think you're going to be less busy in the future, you're conceding defeat. The only way you're going to be less busy in the future is if you're out of business. Okay. If it's growing, you are going to be more busy. It's going to be more difficult. So it's very important to tackle these issues as early as you can. It's not to say that if you missed the window, it's too late now. But generally speaking, don't get lulled into the trap thinking it's too early. The saying in the book is, it's always too early until it's too late. It'll never be the right time. So you got to get on it.
Oh, love it. All right. So that's the kind of stuff we could put on the back of our T-shirts. That was great. And that was... I'm both happy and relieved, and thought this was a great show because I was
You did
nervous
great.
as
You
hell.
did great. No one would have known if you hadn't told us.
It's wild. I mean, we've had authors on before, but this one I was like going, "Oh my God, Scott, man, I need your help. We got to
That's
go
very
get
nice
this
of you to
thing
say.
done." So this show will come out around the release of Incorruptible, and we'll make sure people know about it. And obviously we've had sneak previews, but we'll make sure we read it, and I'll make my sons, my 14-year-old boys, read it for their selling of sneakers. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes. All the people you're willing to put a copy in their hands of, you're doing me a great service. So thank you. I appreciate it. That is what a new book needs. You can't imagine how many people went out on the limb to hand a copy of Lean Startup in 2011 to someone they knew and liked, and just said, look, this is going to be a thing. You're going to be glad you read it. And that was really what drove its success.
Yeah.
So if people are willing to do that for me once again, you have my undying gratitude.
There'll be a link in the show notes.
Well, we
Amen.
trust you. Sorry, I had to throw that
Thank
in.
you. Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, man. Scott, thanks for coming in with me on this one. It was fun working with you and interviewing Eric. So
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to meet Eric, so now I can. That was a bucket list item, so I can check that off the list. And
yeah.
It's very nice.
Great
of
to
you guys.
learn
You're very
from you,
kind.
Eric. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the conversation,
Yeah.
and please be in touch. Look forward to chatting again.
Yes, done. That's a transaction.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Transaction. Craig and I really appreciate the fact that you've listened all the way to the end. What are you actually doing here? For show notes and other episodes, please visit us at thetransactionpod.com. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you get your podcast from. Either you have walked away from your podcast device, or this is playing somewhere in the background. Someone in your house would really like for you to shut this off now.